Welcome to Dave Talks Ball and this, I got to adjust now, December, excuse me, folks, 2nd, 2024 episode. I don't know if it's the static on my shirt getting to my brain there, just totally forgetting it. We're in December now. You know, we always got to adjust. It's like we're about to be in that situation now. You got to, when you're writing, like when you're filling out documents and stuff and you're putting the date in the beginning of the new year from about like that first week of January, you're still wanting to write everything. You're like 24, no, it's 25. It's like I am this month with December. But the good thing is, guys, we're getting closer to crowning championships, and we will crown a champion this weekend in Atlanta at the SEC championship game. I'll tell you, folks, we get the rematch. Georgia against Texas. I don't know if it'll have the same explosiveness that maybe the WCW matches had at the Georgia Dome. And I know we don't play the Georgia Dome now. We're the Mercedes-Benz. But still, we got a champion to crown. Your boy is all about crowning champions. Get fired up. The SEC championship game to me. Look, all kidding aside, I was joking. You go play for the Southeastern Conference Championship. I grew up, we're in an era, again, born in 1989. You do the math, how old I am. In an era where the SEC champion meant something, even if you didn't win the national championship, it still meant something. You hear Kirby Smart played at Georgia from South Georgia. It meant a big deal to him. People who grew up in the southeastern part of the country, whether that's in Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, Louisiana, Alabama, like I mentioned, all these states like that are Tennessee, the predominant Florida, the predominant Southeastern Conference states. Sorry, I can't include Texas right now just because A&M and Texas weren't included and I left them out on purpose. It means something, though, man. Like, to me, I remember sitting there watching with my dad, his dad, one of my childhood buddies. We go over every Saturday for most games to watch college football, but specifically, even if their favorite team was not playing in the SEC championship game, it's still a thing we went and did early December. I remember the first SEC championship game. I remember 1999. Alabama getting a rematch against Florida after they beat them in the Swamp early in the season. Sean Alexander, Freddie Millens go off, they win. What's another one? I remember LSU in 2003 dominating Georgia in a rematch. LSU beat them in Baton Rouge earlier. That was the year Nick Saban and LSU went on to win it all. 04, Auburn's undefeated team beating Tennessee. 05, the Sugar Bowl got moved due to Hurricane Katrina, and Georgia upset LSU in it in Les Miles' first year. 06, a phenomenal one. Florida versus Arkansas. If Reggie Fish doesn't fumble the punt, Arkansas probably wins that game and Florida doesn't go on to win the national championship. It maybe probably is a stretch, but I'm just saying all these memories. 2007, Tennessee, LSU. LSU goes on to win the national championship. 08, that's the one I remember growing up. It was really the first matchup. It was kind of a semifinal. It was Alabama, Nick Saban's second team that was undefeated, came in against Tim Tebow in Florida. Florida was in the midst of their dynasty, about to win 2 out of 3 national championships. We didn't know it at the time, but Florida had the Ole Miss loss early in the season, the promise speech. Nick Saban's second year, they beat Georgia in the blackout earlier. Remember, winner goes on to play in the national championship game against the Big 12, I think, that year at a tie. Texas and Oklahoma ended up being Oklahoma. Florida, Tim Tebow willed that Florida team, Urban Meyer and them, to a win over Nick Saban's second squad. Alabama gets revenge in 09. I was at the Georgia-Alabama SEC Championship in 2012, another semifinal game. Winner went on and played in Notre Dame. I thought that was the national championship game because if Georgia beats Alabama, they would have beat Notre Dame. So many phenomenal memories. Obviously, the recent ones, Georgia-Alabama played quite a bit. Winning the SEC Championship, folks, means something, and it should too in this conference. So I'm excited about it. Are both teams in the playoffs? Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk more about the SEC Championship game here in a bit. We're going to talk quickly. We're going to get right into it, though. A little flag planning. Are you in favor of it? Flag planning. We saw it all across college football this week. I'll give you my take. We talked some coordinator moves, transfer portal just opening up. It's not real hot and sexy right now. No big quarterback names just yet. Maybe one we could talk about that may come with his coordinator. We'll talk about that one. Oklahoma getting the new offensive coordinator. We'll briefly go over the week 14 rivalry week games it was. Again, as the week goes on, guys, as the season goes on, you'll start to notice. I'll break down the games, but when we start getting later in the season, I'm going to give you the meat and potatoes of what I got from these games. Because, again, myself and Cole Thompson react to all of them. We do Sunday Fun Day. I just want to get as many segments and good stuff in for you people as well. We got to talk about the playoff picture, the top 3 teams in the SEC, or the 3 bubble teams. I mean, I think for sure right now we know Georgia, we know Tennessee, and we know Texas are going to be in the college football playoff. Seeding, we don't know. Obviously, I think the 2 seed, maybe even the 1 seed goes to Georgia or Texas, especially Texas, if they were to win, if Penn State were to beat Oregon, if Oregon beats Penn State, Oregon's going to be the 1 seed. But if Penn State were to win, which we wouldn't know until later in that night, since the SEC championship game's at 4 Eastern and the Big Ten game's at night, prime time. So we wouldn't know that. Both teams are going to be in, like I mentioned, Tennessee as well after the win against Vanderbilt. And I think we're fighting for one more spot in the SEC. And if you're a big SEC fan or a fan of Alabama, Ole Miss, or South Carolina, probably need to be cheering for SMU as well to beat Clemson, to just totally knock Clemson out of that. We'll talk playoff picture, talk why South Carolina, why Alabama, why Ole Miss. Transition into the hardwood, phenomenal feast week. I told you it's one of my favorite weeks of the season. You had Auburn winning the Maui Invitational, Bama coming up just short in the Players Era Festival, a game down to the wire against Oregon in the championship game. Oklahoma winning the Bahamas tournament, phenomenal. Kings of Atlanta, or the Atlantis tournament off the top of my head. Who else? You have Florida. I thought winning the ESPN Invitational tournament, just dominating Wake Forest and Wichita State down in Orlando. We'll talk about that. Who was the winners and losers of Feast Week? SEC-ACC Challenge preview. I'm going to go over that. We got that on Tuesday, Wednesday night. We got 16 matchups across the board in that one. First, net rankings came out. We will go over that. Again, we'll go over that one briefly as well. And then finally, we will talk about 4 to 5 things to monitor heading into the SEC Championship game. And if you've missed our SEC Championship preview, go find it on the SEC Unfiltered channel. Myself, Chris Phillips, Cole Thompson, all giving the preview. It got released today. We previewed it last night. But before we really get going, guys, remember this episode of Dave Talks Ball is brought to you by RHOBACK. Go to RHOBACK.com and use code SECU for 20% off of your first purchase. Guys, go get some of your winter gear from RHOBACK. Guys, phenomenal materials. One of their polos right here. Go get your team's emblem, their logo on it. They got a lot of good stuff. Good material. They're RHOBACK for a reason. And tell me your buddies over there at SEC Unfiltered sent them, guys. Remember, use code SECU for 20% off your first purchase. But let's get right to it. Flag planting. Yay or nay? I mean, we saw it in games where Michigan, Ohio State. We saw Florida State this past weekend. Texas A&M. Texas didn't go play in a field, but they did come back onto the 50. Started, kicking the Texas A&M logo at midfield after A&M got off. To give credit to Sark and them, he waited till Texas A&M got off the field so there wouldn't be an issue. Here's my 2 cents on the flag planting. I see both sides of it. First of all, I don't like the flag planting and artificial turf. I think that's kind of dumb. Obviously, it's not going to stick. And let's be honest, it's not going to stick in grass either. If anybody's ever seen the cheerleader flag, they do it. There's no sharpness to it. It doesn't stick into the ground. It's going to be the emotional flag waving you see stick, and it's going to fall down. And I understand that. Players understand that. I don't really dislike it. I mean, I think it is in the middle of an emotional time. You just want a big rivalry game on the road. I'm one of the big complainers too. We always want rivalry week to come back. Again, I always loved when teams hate each other. Again, I'm not a hateful person. I'm a lover, not a fighter. But in sports, I like some dislike. I like some rivalries. I like, hey, man, I don't have any friends that go to Auburn. Or, hey, man, I don't have any friends that go to Alabama. Hey, man, I don't have any friends that go to Mississippi State or Ole Miss. Like, you want that. I think we got a little bit of a taste of that this weekend. Now, maybe it was some of it just frustration into the season stuff. Sure. But I think we were kind of like, man, do the kids really care about rivalries anymore? Is it just kind of a fan thing now? Like, these teams really hate each other like they used to back Florida State back in the day, Miami, Florida State. I always bring up the Boston Celtics and Los Angeles Lakers legitimately did not like each other. Go watch any documentary with Larry Bird, Magic Johnson. Like, I love that stuff in sports. I don't think we get that as much anymore. I mean, it's for different reasons. These kids – the world's smaller with social media. These kids have been going to camps together for years. So there's a lot of familiarity. I think LeBron James back in 2010 with Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade kind of changed that era for Gen Z. Kind of saw like, hey, we can go play on a lot of different teams. The unlimited transfers, you see all that now. I think that's normal to them. It's not like hey, I don't like those guys. And again, I worked in college football for 9 or 10 years. I have one of my best friends in the industry right now works at Auburn, and I went to Alabama and worked at Alabama. Again, you understand everybody, they're all people. Everybody wants to win. But I do enjoy seeing a little bit of hatred, a little bit of intense rivalry. Now, on the other side, should these teams the home teams get mad and go pick a fight when they're doing it? No, I mean, if you're going to go disrespect my midfield logo, I understand why you would want to go say something about it. Now, some of it's like, man, it seems like you got a little more energy left in you. Like, why didn't you utilize that in the 60 minutes on the field? If you got enough energy to go kind of pick a fight after a long 60-minute football game over something like that, you probably could have left a little bit more on the field. And that's not all situations. I just see kind of both sides of this. I'm for it for the sake of the sport because I do think it brought in some more casuals. I think a lot of people are like, man, did you see that Michigan Ohio State game? People are getting maced. Like maced. I mean, you see Florida State, Mike Norvell throwing the Florida flag. You like that stuff. We as college football fans love that, like just rivalry stuff. But at the same time, somebody may be like, well, you're not going to do that on my field. You should beat them. I get it. I see both sides of the story here, guys. I do. I really do. I just wanted to bring it up, talk about it. I'm for the flag planting. I'm also for someone protecting their home field. I just like intense rivalries across the board. I think we got that this week a little bit. I think we got that a little bit. Bryce Jeffcoat, he says he's for it. Yeah, I'm not opposed to it at all. I'm also not opposed to the guy defending his home field, too. I just think it's a little interesting. And to the easiest point, hey, if you don't want them doing it, beat them. Just like if you don't want them celebrating in the end zone, don't let me score. To me, it's kind of stuff like that. It's just, I don't know, stuff like that. To me, I see it on both sides, and I love the emotional side of things coming back. Some coordinator moves across the board in the transfer portal. Oklahoma hiring Ben Arbuckle from Washington State. They interviewed Buster Faulkner, Georgia Tech, Joe Craddock from Tulane, but settled on the 29-year-old. Looking at his bio right now, been at Washington State for the past 2 seasons. And then he was at Western Kentucky the prior 2 years. Air raid guy, again, you figured that because Oklahoma's got to get so much better from an explosive play standpoint on offense. The Cougars finished 24th in passing, 22nd in total offense, 12th in scoring offense. And he's going to have a tall task. I mean, he's taking over an offense that ranks 122nd, 124th, and 94th in passing offense, total offense, and scoring offense. Like I mentioned, you may see a quarterback come in with him. John Mateer, the quarterback at Washington, good player. Got kind of randomly enough, they're going to Oklahoma. And I'm not just saying this because they're going to Oklahoma. Got a little Baker Mayfield-ish to him. Not doesn't have the body mass or the frame that Baker has, or kind of the just compact build that Baker had. Because I remember I was at Auburn in the 2016 or 17 Sugar Bowl, the year Auburn played Oklahoma in New Orleans at the Sugar Bowl, and I remember seeing Baker Mayfield at Harris Casino a couple of nights. It was a hell of a week for Baker, by the way. Dominated us, him and Joe Mixon on the field at the Sugar Bowl. In that week, he was winning. I saw him win one $2,500 hand. It was amazing. Baker was a thick dude if you ever stood next to him. Really thick, a lot of mass on his frame there. But it's what John Mateer, the Washington State quarterback, is kind of reminds me of a little bit. Poor man, not a poor man, just a little similar. Like I said, similar to Baker Mayfield. He's rumored to join, though. He's not in the portal, but he's rumored to join. Sam Pittman officially back at Arkansas. We kind of all figured that. 6-6. I thought would get him back. I think he's going to have to go 7-5, 8-4 next year, though, will be key. I don't think another 6-6 season allows Sam Pittman to have the 26 season in Fayetteville. But he is back. He will have hip surgery on Tuesday, as reported. Charlotte's interviewing Arkansas offensive coordinator Bobby Petrino. That'll be an interesting one. I saw someone posted the provost at Charlotte now is the provost at Arkansas when he got fired previously back in 2011 for all the motorcycle incidents. So I don't know if that'll hinder him getting the job or not. Southern Miss interviewed Todd Hartley. I think it looks like they'll probably go Charles Huff, depending. I mean, Charles Huff put out that statement saying he was at Marshall right now preparing for the Conference USA Championship game. Will he go to Southern Miss? I don't know. But Todd Hartley, Georgia's tight ends coach, interviewed for that as well. Transfer portal-wise, really the big name, Gabe Brownlow-Dindy, the defensive tackle from Texas A&M, originally from Lakeland, Florida. I remember recruiting him when I was at UCF. He has entered the transfer portal across the board. I'm going over the transfer portal, just the SEC guys that have entered today. Like I mentioned, Gabe Brownlow-Dindy. Auburn's Gage Keys entered, defensive lineman. That shocked me. Auburn's got some young guys. Grant Hidalgo, tight end from Auburn from Dr. Phillips High School. Muhammad Kaba, linebacker from South Carolina, entering the portal. He's a redshirt senior. And then we got Keno Coate, outside linebacker from Alabama, originally from Vero Beach, Florida. He will be leaving Tuscaloosa. Keep going down, see. Who else we missing in here? Let's see. Looking for any SEC logos here, folks. South Carolina, Nye Mansell entered the portal. That's an interior offensive lineman, a senior. Auburn again, Holden Gerner, quarterback that signed for Benedict, Kristen, and Savannah. I was never really high on him in high school. Quarterback, not shocking he's transferring, especially them bringing in Deuce Knight. Jaden Wilson, wide receiver from Arkansas. They thought they were going to get a little more out of him. Redshirt junior, 6'3", 172, never panned out. He's entering the portal. It's portal season, folks. It is officially portal season. And that's it. That's it. And Jaden Wilson was yesterday. I wasn't even today. And so is Holden Gertner. So that's it from the portal. No real sexy names. The guy to kind of keep a monitor from a quarterback perspective, though, folks, is our guy John Mateer. But it looks like, as it's rumored, he will probably be following his offensive coordinator from Washington State over to Norman. So him and Ben Arbuckle will be leaving Pullman and heading to Oklahoma. What does that mean for Jackson Arnold? I think he probably hits the portal. A lot of people thought maybe Starkville with Jeff Lebby. But if I'm Jeff Lebby and Mississippi State, I kind of like what I saw in Michael Van Buren all year. I like what I saw with that young cat. He's played in all 8 conference games. I said ever since the injury and about a couple starts in for Michael Van Buren, the best thing that ever happened to Mississippi State, and you never want anybody to get injured, is Blake Shapen getting hurt this year because it allowed Michael Van Buren to go play a full conference schedule. I mean, this guy played on the road in Knoxville, Austin, Oxford, and Athens this year. They're going to be able to open up that playbook a lot more in the spring this year than they were if they had to go keep the training wheels on him if Blake Shapen stayed the whole year. Again, you're not trading a 2-10 season for it, but again, just looking a little bit for the silver lining in all this. Gig'em Bart, Dave, if you're putting your player personnel hat, what do you think A&M's most pressing needs are in the portal? It's got to be quarterback. I mean, I don't think you can go win a championship, and I think that should be the level of expectation in College Station with Marcel Reed or Connor Wigman. Now, who do they go get right now? It's probably they know, and maybe you're tampering, and probably just like everybody else, you are tampering. You're putting feelers out there through trainers, high school coaches, agents. Hey, both our guys we're looking to replace. I think you got to go find some skill guys on the outside to help that quarterback. I like Noah Thomas, Moose Muhammad, very inconsistent practice player. Ja'Day Walker's fine. It starts at quarterback. I like what Coach Cushing did on the offensive line spot. I think they'll get that right. Defensively, I think they're fine. Again, they got to keep recruiting the defensive lineman at the level that like Elijah Robinson was doing before he moved on to Syracuse with his cousin Fran Brown. Mike Elko tried to keep him, but they were recruiting under Jimbo and really Elijah Robinson. Phenomenal dude. Loved working for him. Big time guy. He'll be a head coach one day. DC right now at Syracuse. He was bringing in all those dudes, man. He was bringing in all the Shamars, the McKinley Jacksons, the Walter Nolans. That was all him. But no, I would say right there, Gig'em Bart, starting with quarterback, because again, it's the most important position in the sport. It's the most important position, I believe, in all of sports. And you got to have one. He's got to be one of your better players to go win a championship. And I think that's what A&M's expectation should be. Who is that quarterback? I don't know. I'll bring it up if I talk to some of those guys this week. I'll maybe beat around the bush to see who's going to enter the portal. Also heard wide receiver from Kentucky, Barry Brown, probably going to enter the portal as well. Had a lot of drops, but also, I mean, the quarterback situation was never great the 3 years he was there. I know Will Levis was the first pick in the second round by the Titans, but off the line and protect him, obviously Devin Leary, and then this year with Brock Vandegrift. So I don't know. I would Barry Brown's going to get some run from some people. Moving on from that perspective, let's get into a little rivalry recap. Like I mentioned, I didn't want to go full-fledged. We're not going to sit here and talk 20 minutes in the rivalry recap. But let's get started from Friday's action. Georgia outlast Georgia Tech in overtime. Whew. If you're a Georgia fan, you were sweating it out. Sweating it. That game feels like so long ago at this point. I feel like I've recapped it on multiple shows and the reaction right after. From an offensive standpoint, I thought Georgia was fine. I mean, they're going to get Trevor Etienne back this week. That should help with the depth. Concerns me, though, down the stretch of winning a national championship. They've been getting ran on in the interior of that defense. And that's kind of been the case the last 2 years. Even going back to last year. That's how Alabama won in Atlanta last year against them in the SEC championship game. The interior of that defense concerns me, especially this week as Texas kind of gets it going as well. Trevor Etienne will be back from the rib injury. That should help them to some extent. I thought Carson Beck was fine. But really, how much do we all hate the overtime rules? You can't stand them. The back and forth feels like a game of horse that you'd play in your backyard back as a kid. And we're walking to the other side of the field. We're wasting so much time. It's inefficient. And again, I was at the part of the game at Texas A&M where we got the rules changed. The 7 overtime game, Joe Burrow's last loss in college, Jimbo's first year. Never forget that game as long as I live. That ball is right. That game ball right there. That's that game ball right there. But no, just hate the new overtime rules, man. I thought I would like it, but then you're watching that game and you're just like, I don't know if it's Joe Tessitore every play being like, here's Georgia's playoff chances. Like every time, I don't know. It's like we're playing a game of horse, like hot shot a little bit. Georgia Tech, what a gutsy performance by Haynes King. When I think of Georgia Tech, that's what I think of there. Overall, y'all notice Brent Key not even knowing really the overtime rules. He's holding up one when they're supposed to be having to go for two. I don't know. Overall, though, Georgia Tech's a feisty team, dude. They played hard all year. They beat Miami. I thought this game would be closer than people think. Did I think it would go 8 overtimes? No. But Georgia punched their ticket to the playoffs. They're in. They're in no matter what now. Georgia gets the win in clean, old-fashioned hate. Ole Miss holds on in Egg Bowl to get the 26-14 win. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty. I took Mississippi State plus 25. I thought it was one of the best bets of the week because I thought Ole Miss would be down coming off the Florida loss. I knew they could beat Mississippi State. But again, when you take this many portal kids, how fired up are you going to be in the Egg Bowl? Like Walter Nolan doesn't really even know where the Egg Bowl is. Couldn't probably point out where Starkville is on a map. You think Princely UMan Yellen is really fired up about the Egg Bowl? Come on, guys. Like stuff like that. You just lost your entire season. You still are the better football team. I thought Mississippi State could have been a little bit more risky in the game. I thought they could have taken some more chances. Again, you're punting on like 4th and 2 at midfield late in the game, and then Ole Miss gets the ball and goes and scores and essentially puts it away. I just thought you had nothing to lose. I like the fake punt to kind of get momentum going in the first half, but you had to do something in the second half to keep that going too. You can't just do it once, Jeff Levy. And I think he'll learn. First season in Starkville wasn't great. Thought you needed a conference win, but like I said, silver lining, you got Michael Van Buren, the experience you needed. So I don't know if you need to go get in the portal and get a guy like Jackson Arnold. Ole Miss will be sitting there at 9-3, kind of waiting to see what their very limited playoff hopes most likely will be Sunday. Texas controls the Lone Star Showdown, folks. Texas getting the 17-7 win over A&M. It didn't even feel that close. I mean, I ask you people listening, did anybody ever feel like A&M was really going to win that game? Even when it got to 17-7, they fumbled again, gave it back to Texas. Did anyone really think they were going to get back into this game? They just couldn't produce enough on offense. And to my point, like, I just don't think Marcel Reed or Connor Wigman is the expectation of what you should win at a championship at A&M. I know A&M's never won a championship, but they have championship resources, and I think they have a guy that can lead them to a championship in Mike Elko now. This game was never really close. The thing, it stood with me. Texas weathered the storm early, and they continue to run the football well like they have the last 2 weeks. Again, once they commit to it, they can do it, folks. They ran for 243 yards on 47 carries, 5.2 yards per carry. And they did it. They did something similar against Kentucky the week before. They've limited A&M to 102 yards on the ground. This is the best defense in the league, I think, from all 3 levels. The defensive line, they're really deep. Second level, you got Ant Hill and David Binda on the back end. Obviously, Jadae Barron. You got all the guys. I mean, you really got everybody back there for the most part. I mean, that secondary is a very close unit. You talk to people like Andrew Makuba, like I mentioned, Jadae Barron. I like my guy Michael Taft. Just has a nose of just a knack for just being around the football. Chip Brown from Texas Insider does a phenomenal job. He says a lot of those kids are from the city of Austin, so they're so close and they grew up together. To my point about how small the world is now in the sports world, like it's why they're so good, I think. And I like Texas' ceiling, folks. Quinn Ewers' ankle seemed fine. I loved how they mixed in Arch Manning in the zone read. He felt real comfortable. I always say it. There's a feel to like the zone read, and you saw it with Haynes King against Georgia. He had a real feel for it. Arch Manning has a feel for it. Jalen Milroe is a great athlete, folks. He doesn't have a feel for it. So it is kind of an instinctual thing to be able to do. You got to read. I mean, I thought Jalen Milroe misses on the zone read 90% of the time. But no, give them credit. Texas getting the big win at Kyle Field, 17-7. Tennessee dominates in Nashville, punches their ticket to the college football playoffs. It's got off to a rough start, guys. 14-0 right out of the gate. Opening kickoff for Vanderbilt. Taken to the house, fumble the next possession, give them a short field. They score 14-0. It was like, my God, Tennessee's gonna lose their playoff hopes in Nashville, and they'll never forgive Josh Heupel for this. Well, I thought Tennessee put together their best game of the season, most complete game of the season. After getting down 14-0, they outscored them 27-6, I think. 20, yeah. Let me look at it, man. I'm pulling up. I think 27-6 was what they were in the fourth quarter. Hold on, let me pull it up. Pulling up the box score. Here it is. So, 29-6 is what from the third quarter on, or second quarter on. Just dominated. I was asking all week, what is Tennessee's best performance all year? Eye test wise, their best wins Alabama, but even then, that was an ugly game. They didn't score in the first half. This was their most complete game when they needed it the most. I give Josh Heupel and them a tip of the cap phenomenal win. You're in the college football playoff. You're just waiting to see if you're going to host a home game. I mean, some people have projections. Can you imagine if Ohio State has to go play in Neyland? That would be awesome, dude. I would be jacked for that game. That would be fun. And for Tennessee, playing at home in the first round would be massive because Tennessee's a different team at home, just like most teams are. But Neyland Stadium, when Tennessee is rocking, is a spectacle and a massive 12th man home field advantage, truly. So I think that could be a difference in a win or not for Tennessee, and their season ending earlier than they like, just depending off that seeding. So we'll see. I think they probably will. South Carolina makes it 2 in a row at Death Valley as they sit there just like Ole Miss and Alabama and await their fate at 9-3. We got the three-way tie, 3 bubble teams. We'll talk about it here in just a minute from the SEC. Lenore Sellers, man, just playing above his head. It's the Lenore Sellers, Rocket Sanders show on offense. I don't really think Dow Loggins and Lenore Sellers are a true fit. I think they both would probably tell you they would probably fit better in other. I think Lenore Sellers would tell you he'd fit in a better offense. I think Dow Loggins wish he had more of a true passer. But I haven't seen a kid in a long time. It gets out of a 12-yard loss in a sack and turns it into like an 18-yard gain. I mean, we saw the 3rd and 18 that he scored on. He is literally the offense. Give Dow Loggins credit. He almost just got out of the way and was like, let's just ride this train right now. I mean, they're making a lot of these plays off improvision plays and just Rocket Sanders' ability to fall forward. It reminds us of our 2021 Rocket Sanders at Arkansas. Then defensively, carrying the unit. You're glad to see they won on an interception. The defense carried them for about 50%, 3/4 of the season until the offense kind of came into their own. And now it's an overall good unit. Nobody's as hot as the Gamecocks. They've won 6 in a row. They have a fair shake to talk about the college football playoffs. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But, man, South Carolina gets the big win. And nonetheless, even if they don't make the college football playoff, phenomenal year for Shane Beamer. I had him going 4-8. I know a lot of people had him going 5-7. What was their win total in Vegas going to year? 4.5, 5.5, something like that. We were all wrong on the Gamecocks. Nobody I saw had them 9-3, except if you wore the brightest garnet and black glasses out there, I guess. But no, I mean, phenomenal year. Even if you miss plays 9-3, you have a chance to go win 10 in a bowl game. I think a lot of those guys will play in the bowl game. Tip of the cap to Shane Beamer, them. If it wasn't for Clark Lee, I would give him SEC Coach of the Year. It's just, you go to a bowl game at Vanderbilt, you should win SEC Coach of the Year. Alabama wins Iron Bowl. They win the Iron Bowl in Tuscaloosa, getting a big win over Auburn. I was a little worried going into this game, I'll be completely honest with you. But Alabama gets the 28-14 win. The story of the day, I think, is the defense, honestly. I mean, especially with Deontay Lawson being out, your helmet sticker guy, your green dot guy, your communicator. Auburn had been putting yards up on people on the ground all year, just turning the football over. They held Auburn to 98 yards rushing on 4.3 yards per carry. So it wasn't terrible, but I thought Auburn could have had a little bit more success. I thought Alabama's defense was really good, forced some key turnovers. They dominated the third quarter. Really right off, they put it away almost. And I feel like Hugh Freeze kind of fumbling the end of the first half. Why would you not go for it, man? You really have nothing to lose. Maybe he would tell me, well, I had a bowl game to potentially lose. You still lost it. I thought Auburn would be a little more aggressive in this. I mean, I know they tried to throw back the Jarquez Hunter throwback that it was ended up being intercepted by Bray Hubbard, who's stepped in for Keon Sabb phenomenally. Shouldn't even really be playing right now if they had everybody back. Like Caleb Downs came back, Keon Sabb didn't get hurt, stuff like that. He shouldn't be playing, but he has stepped up to his role. 6th in the SEC in interceptions and just minimal playing experience. Phenomenal job. But really disappointed in Auburn's just overall game plan. It just was not aggressive at all. I thought they'd come in a little bit with a more of aggressive attacker role. Alabama's offense right now, it is what it is. Jalen Milroe is what it is. I mean, Alabama was -2 in turnovers. They had 4 turnovers, forced 2 by Auburn. Jalen Milroe, not great. I shouldn't say that. He was 18 for 24, 256. Just make some really bad plays like at the end of the half, the strip fumble. And again, I thought Auburn's defensive line dominated Alabama's offensive line up front, honestly. That was the bright spot for Auburn in this one. It really was. I thought the flag in the third quarter, almost the melee, with it only being a penalty on Alabama was ridiculous. It should have been on both teams, offsetting penalties across the board on that one. Again, bad officiating from the SEC folks, but I mean, what's new? Are we not used to that? But I thought Alabama had a solid performance. Was it great? Was it dominating? No, but you never, again, thought Alabama was going to lose this game. Bama gets the 28-14 win over Auburn. Missouri survives the snow and Razorbacks in Como. Again, at the end of the game, I was surprised that those teams were passing the football the way they were, honestly. It was actually really impressive. Eli Drinkwitz finishing 9-3 this year, getting another win over Arkansas. Watch him go to the team stats. 28-21 Missouri win. I mean, Arkansas threw for 229. I mean, I had a buddy at Arkansas send me a picture of his hotel room the day before or the day of, and it was just like snow everywhere. I mean, you guys saw it. It looked the exact same. We talked about it in the prediction, but not a lot to really break down in this one. But I just think overall, Missouri, would it be an underachieving season at 9-3? I wouldn't say so. I would not. That's what I had them at. That's what I had them projected at. I just thought the schedule really benefited. But what game did they lose that they shouldn't have lost? I mean, they lost to Bama with a backup quarterback, essentially. Lost to South Carolina in a really good game. Then you lost to A&M. And it's like I say on every show, I know Brady Cook was out for a couple games, but what game would you have won if you would have had him that you did lose? I mean, you beat Oklahoma without him. I still think the Alabama game's probably closer, but you don't win it. I don't know. They're about right. I know people are like, well, we lost Brady Cook. What could have been? Like I said, though, what game did you lose that you would have won with him? I mean, you beat Oklahoma. That'd been the only one. So nice season for Missouri and Eli Drinkwitz, 9-3. Have a chance to go get 10 and, hey, finish that Cotton Bowl win from last year with an 11-win season and a 10-win season this year. It's a hell of a job in Columbia. Arkansas, Sam Pittman. I think they need to go from a momentum standpoint to help Sam out to get some momentum heading into 2025. You don't want to finish with a losing record. They need to take that bowl game real serious. Are they going to be going to Birmingham, the Liberty Bowl? I've seen some of those projections. But again, that's what I had them at 6-6. Just Arkansas at times finds ways to lose. But at the same time, they got that big win over a playoff team in Tennessee at home. So give them their flowers. Florida handles the Noles in Tallahassee. Florida getting pulling up the score right now. Florida gets the 31-11 win over Florida State. Florida State finishes 2-10. Florida finishing 7-5, coming out of the depths to pull that off. I mean, after the A&M game in the bye week, we all left them for dead, myself included. I think Billy Napier could be up for the Coach of the Year along with Shane Beamer and Clark Lee. But like I say, the Vanderbilt coach gets to 6 wins. He automatically wins it, folks. It is hard to win at Vanderbilt. It's harder than ever now in the portal era. So Clark Lee gets it. But, I mean, Florida did what they should have done to him. DJ Lagway's been the difference. Kids gravitate towards him. They'll get a lot of kids in the portal. Florida could be pretty good next year. I'm telling you, what a hell of a turnaround, though, man. 7-5 just being left for dead. This was a flag game. You tell Norvell, Billy Napier got into it at the end. He threw the Florida flag. But I love this rivalry. I love when Florida State don't like each other. Wish Florida State was a little bit better for the sport. But overall, their season ends. They just hired Gus Malzahn as the head coach, and they open up with Alabama in Tallahassee next year, folks. But Florida getting the big win in Tallahassee to get to 7-5. They'll await their bowl performance. Then LSU tops off the season with the win over Sooners in Baton Rouge. I mean, I predicted that. I thought this would kind of happen. Oklahoma bouncing back off the emotional win against Alabama at home. Kind of felt like the Sooners, when you watch this game, just kind of breathed a little bit. When I went back and watched the highlights, it just kind of, you felt like they had chances to get in it. But again, you never really felt like LSU was going to lose. It's like you never felt like LSU was going to really lose when you watched the game this week. Texas wasn't going to lose to A&M. Like Bama, Auburn, all kind of felt like the same. Garrett Nussmeier went back out, wasn't going to miss. He came back. Oklahoma briefly had the lead, but I don't know. Oklahoma coming back off the big emotional senior night win over Alabama kind of felt like they just relaxed for a minute. Maybe I'm wrong. Venables would probably tell me I'm wrong. I may be, but it kind of felt like, man, they got their big senior night win. They got to 6 wins. They're more worried about finding an offensive coordinator and preparing for 2025. Like, not that they didn't prepare to go win in Baton Rouge. They 100% did. It just kind of felt like LSU probably needed that one more. They needed to go 8-4 more so than Oklahoma needed 7-5. And they kind of operated that way. LSU felt like they had a little bit more fire under their ass than Oklahoma did in this one. I don't know. Just rewatching the game, that's kind of what it felt like. No massive takeaways from this one. They get the 37-17 win. Overall, though, I mean, I thought the LSU defense was fine across the board. I mean, they only gave up 277, 110 passing yards. But again, with Jackson Arnold, these beat-up receivers, 5 out of 7 guys out of there, they were never going to go pass for a lot of yards. They didn't in the win against Alabama. But the difference in this one, they only rushed for 167 yards on the ground on 37 attempts. So, I mean, LSU, again, I thought did a really good job. A pretty clean game across the board. But this game kind of went how I thought. LSU controlled it from the start. Going to the playoffs, I really think the South Carolina game was a projected win in the beginning. I really think the SEC game was a projected win in the beginning. Explain. I'd love to hear you. Appreciate you listening. Mark Livingston there. Let's go to that playoff picture. Speaking of South Carolina. All right, so guys, unless you've been living under a rock, you never get on social media, especially Twitter or X. Everybody's debating what SEC bubble team between Alabama, Ole Miss, and South Carolina should get in. So let's talk about it. Why South Carolina? What is the most redeeming quality South Carolina has going for it? They've won 6 straight, folks. They've won 6 straight. Playing pretty well. And I'm pulling up my schedule of them right now. Playing pretty well right now. Not playing pretty well, playing really well. Kind of coming into themselves offensively. No one's hotter in the country. They got the Oklahoma, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, beat Oklahoma, handed them right out of the gate. A&M game looks less and less as the weeks go on. A&M's lost twice since to Auburn and to Texas this past week. Still a good win, though. You got them off a big win against LSU. At Vanderbilt, one of the few games outside of the Tennessee one that Vanderbilt just kind of got rocked in. Give South Carolina credit there. I thought they played a phenomenal game against Missouri. So did Missouri. I thought that was Missouri's best game of the season, and South Carolina still beat them. They beat Wofford, and then they won at Clemson. They finished strong. They had their first 6. They were 3-3. Dropped the game to Ole Miss 27-3. Lost to Alabama 27-25. Game came down to the wire. South Carolina led briefly, but Alabama led for about 75% of it. South Carolina's biggest thing they have going for them, folks, is they are 6-0 in the back half of their season. They don't have more top 25 wins than Alabama. They don't have the head-to-head over Alabama or South Carolina. I just, outside of just playing really hot right now, and that doesn't mean South Carolina's season's bad, or maybe they shouldn't even be in the top 12 if you really went and broke down some other teams. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. I just think that's the best thing they really have going for them right now. I mean, am I wrong in saying that? I hate to be like that, but that's just kind of how I feel right now. It's the only metric they really have going for them right now is just you're playing really well right now. And unfortunately, you're tied with 2 teams with the same record, all 3 teams sitting at 9-3, 5-3 in conference. And you lost to both of them. You're 0-2 against the common teams we're comparing you against. That has to mean something. I mean, it does, right? I mean, it's got to mean something. It's got to mean something. I don't know what else to say. And I'm not bashing South Carolina fans or South Carolina. I just feel like we really struggle to accept that. And a lot of people like to move goalposts just to, hey, well, look how much closer we played against Vanderbilt. We beat up Vandy in Oklahoma. They did it. It's like, well, yeah, man, but like you lost to Alabama and you also lost to Ole Miss too, and Alabama beat LSU. You lost to LSU. Was it because of the refs? Maybe, but I mean, you still lost. Was it because Lenore Sellers went out and you had to play Robbie Ashford? Yeah, maybe, but you still lost. Like, so it is what it is. I mean, outside of that, I really just think South Carolina's only case right now is legitimately they're hot right now. They've won 6 in a row. But I'll say this. Has anyone ever won the valedictorian? I mean, I have to tell you people, there's 800 people listening, watching this right now. You're obviously pretty smart if you're listening to this show. That would be like, hey, man, his grades came on strong senior year. Now, granted, he had below a 2.5. He's around 2.0 his freshman, sophomore year, but who cares? That's what I'm talking about. They were 3-3 in their first 6 games, and now they're hot, 6-0. Give them credit. They have been. They've been really hot, playing really well. But we can't forget about the first 6 either. I don't know. Am I wrong? Am I the messed up one for thinking that? I feel like it's pretty 2 + 2 = 4. Pretty common sense. Add in you lost both games and got crushed by one of them at home in Ole Miss, 27-3. I just don't know how you can let South Carolina in over these 2 teams. Maybe you could let them in over a 2-loss SMU team if SMU were to lose, because you could say, hey, we beat Clemson, the ACC champ. Now, I don't think that's ever going to be an argument, but I just kind of think you could get in over them maybe. I think it's about it. It's just an unfortunate year. I think South Carolina would have a better case if they never played Alabama or Ole Miss and they were all 3-9-3. Then I think we could be like, well, my eyes are telling me South Carolina's playing pretty well right now. So let's put South Carolina in. But they played both the teams they're compared against, and they lost and led for maybe 10% of those 8 quarters they played both these teams. It was after the 8, they never led in the Ole Miss game. And then out of the gates, if I remember right, they had the 8-minute drive to open up the third quarter where Rocket Sanders scored, and they took the lead briefly. And then Alabama took the lead and had it the whole time. I mean, Alabama was up 14-3. Again, I don't know. Has South Carolina gotten better since then? Yeah, sure. Absolutely. But we got to look at the big picture, right? We got to. Let's go to the next one. Why Alabama? Well, I think for Alabama's sake here, Alabama's got the best win against Georgia. They also have wins against South Carolina, a team they're compared against with 9 wins. LSU, a team they went on the road and handled, an 8-4 LSU team on the road that Ole Miss lost in Baton Rouge to, that South Carolina lost at home to. Got to give them credit in this conversation. And they beat a 9-3 Missouri team. They have the best resume best wins out of these 3 teams being compared. Best win, Alabama against Georgia. And another thing to factor in, folks, what if Georgia beats Texas again, wins the SEC? That only amplifies Bama and Ole Miss's best win. Both those teams beat Georgia at home. We all remember that. You're really going to penalize Bama or Ole Miss and let South Carolina in when they beat the conference's champion and beat the South Carolina team they're being compared against? Can't really do that. Bama's strength of record, it's the highest. Number 10, they have the highest strength of schedule. Now, South Carolina comes in at number 11 right behind them, but still, I think Alabama across the board has the best resume. I do, and I don't think you can deny that. I really don't even think it's much of a conversation resume-wise. I really don't. Now, could South Carolina beat Alabama right now potentially? Sure, on a given day, but that's just, you could say that about anyway. Could South Carolina beat Oregon right now? Sure. Should Oregon be out? No. These are the conversations we got to have back and forth. I think Alabama's pretty plain and simple why you let them in. And I think if Georgia goes and beats Texas this week in Atlanta, it only amplifies Alabama's win against Georgia and Ole Miss's win against Georgia. You beat the SEC champion. South Carolina has no wins over any playoff teams unless Clemson wins the ACC this week and gets the automatic rep. Let that sink in. South Carolina has no wins over a potential college football playoff team unless Clemson beats SMU, which could happen. So they could have won. Let's be honest. But currently, as we speak right now, they do not. And why Ole Miss? I mean, I talked about they have one of the best wins. They're with Bama the best win, probably the best win if you want to talk about performance because they dominated Georgia. But they do have the worst loss at home to Kentucky. I mean, Kentucky, if anyone sees Kentucky's bus still driving around Oxford, I don't think it ever came back to Lexington because they didn't win another conference game when they got back. So that is definitely the worst loss. I will say this, though. Ole Miss has the highest ceiling out of these 3 teams. I think when all 3 of these teams are playing their best and depth factors in, I would take Ole Miss. If you told me what one of these 3 teams, what team out of these 3 is the best to win the national championship, I would take Ole Miss. I would. But again, they have the worst loss. They did beat South Carolina. They lost LSU, who them and Alabama have a common opponent with. Alabama crushed LSU in Baton Rouge. Ole Miss lost to them in overtime in Baton Rouge. Led most of the game, though, but still lost. I don't think you could put an Ole Miss in over Alabama, though, just off resume alone. Again, we can do the – again, I'm an eye test guy, but I also think, am I that certain Ole Miss would beat Alabama on a given day? I'd probably go 55-45 Ole Miss, but I'm not overly confident in it. I just think Alabama has the best resume out of these 3, and I think it's only going to be enhanced if Georgia beats Texas. And by the way, I think Texas is probably going to win that game, so I don't think that'll happen. But if Georgia wins, both Ole Miss and Alabama have wins over the Southeastern Conference champ and the head-to-head over South Carolina. I think South Carolina's out. I just think they're out really based off the head-to-head in the same record. If South Carolina was 10-2 and had 2 losses to Ole Miss and Alabama and Ole Miss were both 9-3 and had bad losses, I think we have a real conversation about South Carolina right now. And South Carolina lost to them early in the year like they did and went on a 6-game tear and had 1 less loss. I think we're talking South Carolina potentially for real. But they have the same record head-to-head. And if Georgia wins the SEC, it's like, come on, are we leaving out one of the 2 teams that beat the SEC champ and has the better resume? No way. This conversation's between Alabama and Ole Miss. I think Alabama really gets the nod because of strength of record. Ole Miss has the worst loss, and then we have a common opponent in LSU. They both played at Tiger Stadium in Baton Rouge. Same setting, same venue. Bama dominated. Ole Miss didn't. Not saying Ole Miss wouldn't win in a series. I actually probably think they would. You got to take resume into account at some point. Let's look at some comments. My God, Joe K, congrats on the win, brother. Will the CFP committee even select a fourth SEC team? SC is definitely more deserving than Alabama. Love you, Joe, but I feel like we got to go. We got to disagree there. I mean, Alabama beat South Carolina. Alabama's the better win, better strength of record, better strength of schedule. I mean, South Carolina literally has nothing going for them in their favor against these two other teams that they did play and lose to, other than they're just off a vibe and they're playing well the last 6 weeks. That's it. Like I said, if South Carolina's 10-2, we're talking a different conversation. Chris Fleming, you're not wrong, but Bama lost to two bad teams who South Carolina blew out. I don't know. It's a tough one. Yeah, but I mean, you could also add in South Carolina lost LSU and Alabama beat them, so subtract that. You know, if we're going to start doing that, we could go in circles all day. Alabama beat South Carolina. Alabama has the best win out of these teams and has the better strength of record, better strength of schedule. I think that's just kind of it. Again, you can make a case to me none of these three teams get in. I'm not really that high on 9-3 teams getting in. I don't really think 3 lost teams should potentially get in. Now, if it's SMU and they played the G group of 5 schedule they did, I think it's a different conversation. But if SMU beats Clemson, wins the ACC, I think Alabama's going to get in. And I even think it's a discussion if SMU loses because SMU has played nobody this year, folks. Again, I'm not going to get onto that. We're really talking these 3 teams. But if I was ranking how it should be ranked in this one, I would go Bama 1, Ole Miss 2, South Carolina 3. Mainly because the Alabama and Ole Miss both beat South Carolina head-to-head, and they all have the same record. Remember, South Carolina's 10-2, and these two teams were 9-3, and they beat South Carolina for their only 2 losses early in the year. I'd be open to another discussion. Add in, Bama has the best win. So does Georgia. So does Ole Miss over potential an SEC champion team. Strength of record, Alabama. Strength of schedule, Alabama. Top 25 wins after tomorrow will probably be in Alabama's favor. I don't know. And let's call a spade here, guys. I'm not dumb enough. Alabama's the bigger brand. I'm not saying you add that in, but the committee certainly will. You think the committee, you don't think ESPN wants to see Alabama potentially go to South Bend, Indiana to play Notre Dame in an 11-6 matchup in December in the first 12-team playoff and the first time we play on-campus playoff games over South Carolina, Notre Dame? I'm not saying you pick teams off that. I'm just saying it's going to be Alabama, folks, out of these 3. I think Ole Miss is out of the discussion because I don't, but I think everyone kind of puts them to the side because I don't know. I think people are like, you spent $12 to $14 million on your portal or your roster, and you still lost 3 games with that easy of a schedule. So I think people are like, nah, you don't deserve it. And people aren't wrong. You don't. You can make a case. All 3 of these teams don't deserve it. You lost 3 games. For South Carolina, like I said, it's a vibe thing. They're playing well the last 6 weeks. They kind of came into their own offensively. It's kind of like they're a basketball team. They're just letting their 2 best players just go operate in Lenore Sellers and Rocket Sanders, and that's fine. But I think Alabama, when you look at just the big 35,000-foot view of this whole situation between these 3 teams in the SEC, it's got to be Alabama. It's got to be. Again, like I said, if we were sitting here 9-3 and none of these teams had played, totally different. Totally different. And people may be like, well, some people were saying Bama was going to get in over Tennessee when Tennessee beat them head-to-head. Why has it changed now? Well, Georgia beat Tennessee. So if it was between Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee, they all went 1-1 against each other. So head-to-head doesn't mean as much then. Head-to-head means a ton when you're comparing 3 teams that did play, and South Carolina lost to both of them. Come on, guys. Come on. Dylan Baskins. Ole Miss blew out Oklahoma and Bama hot riled. I'm assuming you're saying Bama got beat bad by Oklahoma. Appreciate you listening. Dylan, we got rolled. Gotcha. Sorry. Appreciate you listening. No, I mean, you're not wrong there. The Oklahoma loss was not good. No denying that. But I don't think you can just put in Ole Miss just because they beat Oklahoma and Alabama didn't. If that's the case, why don't we just take Alabama beat LSU, Ole Miss didn't? You can do that too. How does Bama have the best win? Ole Miss beats Georgia by 3 scores. Bama, I said they both have the same best win. But Alabama has better wins across the board, though, when you go down it. Bama beat Georgia. Bama beat South Carolina. I know Ole Miss did too. Bama beat LSU. Ole Miss didn't. Bama beat Missouri. Ole Miss doesn't have that win. Ole Miss didn't have a tough schedule, folks. And then Bama, Wisconsin's not some great team, but Wisconsin's a lot better at a conference game than Wake Forest, who Ole Miss played. If we're comparing strength of record, strength of schedule, Nobody wants to get into that. No Ole Miss fan wants to get into that argument against Alabama. Like I said all year, guys, if you had Kentucky and Mississippi State on your schedule this year, you had an easy conference schedule. All relative. No SEC schedule is easy, don't get me wrong, but you had a relative easy schedule. That's why Ole Miss was never going to get into the SEC championship game once they lost 2 conference games, because remember, all the tiebreakers kind of went head-to-head. Then once it got to that, it got to opponent winning percentage. Again, like I mentioned, I've done the research. If you had Kentucky and Mississippi State on your schedule, you were not winning a tiebreaker. Just like Texas was never going to win a tiebreaker if they got 2 losses and got that tie, because they played Mississippi State and Kentucky. It's just the way it was this year. Horton hears you. Hook 'em horns. Yeah, appreciate you guys. But no, that's how I would rank them out of these 3 teams. You go Bama 1, Ole Miss 2, South Carolina 3. I think the media and stuff will kind of push Ole Miss out a little bit, just because I think Lane Kiffin ruffles the wrong feathers for some people. I don't think he was wrong yesterday. You see him and Brett Bielema getting into it. And I think people are just kind of like, man, they paid for their whole roster and still couldn't go with an easy schedule. So I think people are going to push them to the side. It'll be interesting to see how the committee has these 3 teams ranked tomorrow. It will. I mean, well, I tweeted about it today. Logically, whatever they have them ranked tomorrow, it can't change after this week's action, right? Because they're all done. They've all played their 12 games. Unless, like I mentioned, Georgia wins the SEC. And does that push – if Ole Miss is behind South Carolina this week, does that push them ahead of South Carolina? And I know Ole Miss fans won't care if they're not getting into the college football playoffs. They're just ahead of South Carolina. That's definitely going to amplify both Alabama and Ole Miss's schedule if Georgia wins the SEC this week and Bama and Ole Miss both beat them. And to be fair to South Carolina, if Clemson won the ACC, they can make we beat a Power 4 conference champ this past week. I think that amplifies their resume. Now, I know that still's a bid, and either way, it's going to be Alabama, folks. I think the resume's there, which is fair. 35,000-foot view. I think you got to go Bama. And let's be honest, college football is a big business, folks. They see the money of potentially Alabama going in December to South Bend or State College or something like that. I mean, dude, come on. It's about the dollar bills, folks. Let's move on to the hardwood. Feast week, winners and losers. Again, we talked about it. Last time I talked to Alabama had lost in the championship game, the Players Era Festival championship game to Oregon. Wild, fun game across the board. So that's the last time we talked. Let's get into the winners and losers of Feast week. I think the biggest winner, Auburn, man. Auburn. They won the Maui Invitational, showcased their dominance. Janai Broome averaged 21.6 points, 15 boards, and 3 blocks in the tournament. I mean, he's up for the Naismith Player of the Year so far. Auburn beat Memphis in the final, 90-76. Didn't even feel that close. Like I said, Broome MVP honors. Like, this team doesn't have a bunch of NBA guys, but they have so many key guys. Dylan Caldwell plays his role well. Denver Jones is improved. Chad Baker-Mazara is improved. Auburn was the biggest winner, and I think they're the best team in college basketball this year. It'll be fun. We'll talk ACC, SEC challenge here in just a minute. But they got a big trip to Cameron Indoor on Wednesday night against Duke. But Auburn, big winner. I think Florida was a big winner. Won the ESPN Invitational Tournament, dominating Wake Forest and Wichita State and Orlando. Florida's really good, folks. They're a dangerous team. They're just a physically impressive team. I always say that every time I talk about Florida. Walter Clayton III doing his thing. It's just Florida's a really good basketball team right now. I think there's going to be a lot of shakeup in my SEC power rankings tomorrow that we release as well. But I think overall Florida's winning. I think Florida's the top 10 team in the sport right now. I really do. I like what Walter Clayton's doing. I like what Will Richards doing. Really good basketball team over there. I think Denzel Aberdeen's doing some good stuff as well. So Florida, I thought, was a big winner as well from Feast Week. Oklahoma won the battle for Atlantis, beat Providence, beat Arizona, beat Louisville in the championship. I thought Porter Mosier's team has done a phenomenal job across the board. I had a blast last week just because they hadn't played a team with a winning record. So I wanted to kind of see what they were going to look like in Atlantis. And I was like, man, if they can just kind of win a game, you feel like you'd be a little fired up if you were them, right? But no, I mean, again, they don't give a lot of money to this basketball program from an NIL perspective. They don't have a big war chest in Oklahoma. So I think they should give more money to that. I think Jeremiah Fears is one of the more underrated players in college basketball. Does a phenomenal job. Kobe Elvis. That's really what it is right now. It's the Fears Elvis show right now. Kobe Fears, Jeremiah Fears, Kobe Elvis doing big things. They got a big matchup against Georgia Tech this week. It'll be another good win for them across the board. Biggest loser? It's got to be Arkansas, right? It's got to be the Razorbacks, right? I mean, they took a beating on essentially – I mean, this game didn't even feel that close. they took a loss. I mean, a pretty big beating against Illinois and Kansas City on Thanksgiving Day. I mean, lost 90-77, only a 13-point loss, but still, they were down mostly anywhere 12 to 18 points most of that game. Brad Underwood's squad went out and dominated. And again, I mean, the bright spot right now for Arkansas, sitting with 2 losses, and it hadn't been pretty even in some wins, is a Adu Theroux has looked pretty good. Outside of that, you need Boogie Flan to step up, Nelly Davis. They just haven't right now. I mean, they really haven't. But moving to the SEC-ACC challenge, going over that schedule for you. Let's see. I actually want to pull up the betting lines for you as well. Let's go through. Let me pull that up for you real fast for tomorrow's game. Where college basketball does it just day at a time. But for the schedule tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern on ESPN2, Arkansas at Miami. Arkansas currently favored by 4.5 in this one. This is kind of Miami's lost 4 in a row. This is a game, Arkansas, it's probably going to be sloppy and ugly. Total, if you're into betting the back, college basketball over-under total 155.5. Arkansas needs this game. You can't be – Miami is currently 3-4 right now. You can't lose this game. This is a game John Calipari and the boys cannot lose if you're cowing them. You can't lose this game to this Miami team. But I think it's going to be close because I just don't think Arkansas is playing good basketball right now. Hope I'm wrong, but I'll give Arkansas the win in a very close one. 7 p.m. Eastern on ESPN2, Notre Dame at Georgia. Georgia favored by 8.5 right now. I think Georgia's going to be with anywhere from that 8th to 11th spot in the league. They're playing really good basketball. Their only loss was to Marquette, who's the best team in the Big East. I like Georgia in this one at home. I do. I think Notre Dame's solid. They were in the Players Era tournament, but still, I think Georgia's the better team. I think R.J. Godfrey's been big for him. Obviously, Asa Newell, Silas Demery, Blue Cane, all doing a phenomenal job. I like Tyron Lawrence, the Vanderbilt transfer. They've done a really good job, Mike White and them. I like them to win that game against Notre Dame. Missouri favored by 8.5 at home. Cal comes in 6-1. Missouri needs to make up for that Memphis loss. They need to somehow get that back, I feel like. I think they should win this game, though. They should win this game. I'm going to take them at home. I'm going to take the Tigers at home. So I got the SEC undefeated through this challenge. I think where'd they go last year? 8-8, I think, last year. South Carolina at Boston College. South Carolina favored by 3.5 in this one. Give me Boston College. I think South Carolina is going to drop one here. I think South Carolina is probably the worst team in the league, but they're not that bad. It's just after Colin Murray Bulls, who steps up for this team? Who really steps up for this team? That's what I would. You want more out of Miles Studi. You're just not getting that from him at all right now. Thomas Wright, you would like to, not Thomas Wright, but both Wright and Thomas, you'd like to see a little bit more of them. I just think teams, the game plan's going to be, let's go take away Colin Murray Bulls, and nobody else can really do anything. They don't have a lot of scores. So overall, I think they got a good, solid win. And Virginia Tech's not great. They had to have that one in the Fort Myers tournament they were in, that Michigan ultimately winning. But I think South Carolina probably, if I had to guess, probably drops this one against Boston College. Moving back to Tuesday's action. And that game's on the road, too. I probably think that. Syracuse at Tennessee. The line, Tennessee favored by 19.5 right now. Tennessee will win this game. Syracuse has 2 losses. They come in at 4-2 with 2 losses to Texas and Texas Tech. Remember, they lost to Texas in that Brooklyn, whatever the name of that tournament was, like 2 weeks ago. Wasn't an overly pretty game. And remember, they started coming on when Carmelo Anthony came on. I expect Tennessee to win that. Georgia Tech at Oklahoma. Oklahoma favored by 10.5. It's probably a little too many points coming off a big championship win, but Oklahoma, I'll give Porter Moser and the boys the win here. Don't feel overly confident in that. I think it'll be a close game, but give me Porter and the boys. Wake Forest at Texas A&M. Texas A&M favored by 8.5. I like A&M at home against Hunter South, and then give me Texas A&M. Wake Forest played Florida last week, got hammered. Texas A&M, they're much better at home than they are any neutral site. Again, they went 2-1 in that Players Era Festival. A&M did, with their only loss being to Oregon, who won the tournament. And then the most interesting game of Tuesday night, the first night, Ole Miss at Louisville, 9 p.m. Eastern on the ACC Network. Louisville favored by 3.5. Be a tough road game at the KFC Yum Center for Chris Beard's squad. I think Louisville and Pat Kelsey get this one. I think this will be the second loss for the SEC. I think Ole Miss is going to be an NCAA tournament team. They should have beat Purdue the other day. Did you see it came down to a last-second shot, and just Sean Padula didn't box out. They got the last-second tip. Tough play by Sean Padula. But I think Ole Miss is really good. I just think coming back from San Diego to Oxford into Louisville, I don't know. I can just see them dropping this game. I think Louisville will win this one. Florida State at LSU. LSU favored by 3.5 in this one. Give me LSU at home. I think LSU, Matt McMahon get a win there. Kentucky at Clemson, another interesting one. Kentucky favored by 1.5 at Little John Arena. I mean, what do we think of Clemson here? I mean, Clemson lost P.J. Hall to the NBA. R.J. Godfrey left. It's a big front court loaded team. They have one loss to Boise State early in the year. I mean, kind of their guy in the front court. You can remember he shoots a lot of threes. Pretty finesse player across the board. Our guy, Ian Shefflin, wears like the headband and stuff. Pretty good player, honestly. Kentucky and them are due to not play well. But I think they win this game. I just think they win. So I think the first night, the SEC goes what? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think they go 8-2 the first night. 2 losses being, I think Ole Miss drops one at Louisville, and I think South Carolina loses to Boston College. The second night, we got 2 loaded ones. 7:15 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. Alabama at North Carolina. No line out for this. I feel like we see this every year now. Back in the PK tournament, PK 18. We saw it last year in the Sweet 16. Is this R.J. Davis' revenge game? R.J. Davis, Mark Sears. Bama's got to limit the turnovers at the Dean Dome. I think Bama's got a big front court advantage. They're big, but they got a front court advantage over Withers and them. Just got to stay in a foul trouble. If Bama doesn't turn the basketball over against Purdue and Oregon, they're probably undefeated right now. They got to get that fixed. Mark Sears has to get that going. I'll also say on the turnover side of things, Bama's got to start forcing more turnovers. I think Bama's fine. I think they're the most talented team in the SEC. I'll go they get a slight victory. North Carolina's not great. They're 4-3. Both these teams have been really challenged, though. I mean, combined, these teams have played Kansas, they have played Auburn, and they've played Michigan State. Alabama's played Houston, and they played at Purdue, and they played a really good Oregon team. This is a total toss-up to me. I'm going to go Bama slightly getting the win because I think they're going to need this. If Bama wins this one and can beat Creighton at home and finish the non-conference play with 2 losses as they get the lineup going, and prayers up to Latrell Wright-Sell tore his Achilles. I do believe it's not official, but I think he's unfortunately going to be out for the rest of the year in that regard. Then at 7:15 p.m. Eastern on ESPN2, Virginia at Florida. I like Florida at this one. I do. I like Florida to get this win again. I think Florida's a top 10 team. I think they're playing even better than Alabama is right now. So I think Florida gets the win at home. 9:15 p.m. Eastern on ESPN right after the Alabama-Carolina game. Auburn at Duke. Remember, Auburn, Alabama, both in the Raleigh-Durham area this on Wednesday night. Can Auburn drop a game? They do. I mean, Auburn's got some phenomenal wins. I mean, they beat Houston in Houston at the Toyota Center, beat Iowa State, who I think is a really good basketball team, beat North Carolina, who's solid, and then beat Memphis at Duke. I think Auburn drops one. I think this is the one they drop it. You can't hold it against them. The matchup will be the young buck Cooper Flag against the vet Janai Broom. Auburn's the best team in the sport right now. I do think they drop one Cameron Indoor. I think it's going to kind of be a shock to them, like, oh, this is kind of what Auburn Arena feels like. Like small, compact arena. Everybody's against you. It's real close. I just get a feel Duke gets a big win here. They need it. I mean, they've already dropped 2. They dropped one already to Kentucky, and they dropped one to Kansas early in the season as well. So I think Duke gets this one at home. At 9:15 p.m. on the SEC Network, number 18 Pitt at Mississippi State. This is another really good basketball game. Give me Mississippi State at home, though. I think Mississippi State will beat Pitt at home. But there's not a line out. I just think if this game was at Pitt or a neutral site, and Pitt's already beat an SEC team. Remember that, folks. They beat LSU in that West Virginia tournament 2 weeks ago, the Greenbrier tournament that I think Pitt Pitt ended up winning it. Give me Mississippi State at home, though. If this was anywhere else, I would take Pitt. 9:15 p.m. Eastern, Texas at NC State. Give me NC State. I think NC State will beat Texas there. And then 9:15 p.m. Eastern on the ACC Network, Vandy at Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech 3-4, lost to South Carolina. Vanderbilt, Mark Byington team playing pretty well, man. Playing pretty well across the board. They come in 7-1. Their only loss to a Drake team that beat Miami as well. Give me Vanderbilt. So I think the SEC is going to go, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 16 of these games. I think they're going to go on the second night 5-1 with the only loss being Texas at NC State. So I think overall the SEC is going to go 13-3 this year. I think their losses will be Ole Miss at Louisville, South Carolina at Boston College, and Texas at NC State. Now, don't get me wrong. There'll probably be somebody else who drops one. Alabama could easily lose to North Carolina. Oh, sorry. No. I got them 12-4. I apologize. I had Auburn losing at Duke. So that's it. The 4 losses, Auburn at Duke, South Carolina at Boston College. I think Boston College will win that. Ole Miss at Louisville. I think it'll be a tough road game coming off a big tournament, tough loss in San Diego. Coming out, I don't know. I just think Ole Miss doesn't play well in that game tomorrow against Louisville. I think Louisville, and then I got NC State beating Texas on the road. NC State at home beating Texas. I just think that's what it's going to go. I mean, 12-4, you'd be fired up the league. Remember, last year it went 8-8. They split. They went 500 across the board from that perspective. Moving back to the comments, Hortons hear you. I think they take the easy way out and don't let anyone in. Yeah, that would be, especially if SMU lost. I agree. That'd be the easy thing to do, but also I think you get a lot of push. I mean, you think Greg Sankey's going to allow that too? Again, guys, it's big business. I know we don't want to hear that at times, but it's big business in this sport. They're going to try to get another. Again, SMU doesn't have that big brand. That's the only thing if you're an SMU fan a little bit this week where it's like, let's just take it out of the committee's hands, man. They're going to be getting so much pressure. It is what it is. Joe K, fair enough analysis on why Bama should be the fourth SEC team in the CFP, assuming CFP committee selects one. Not having divisions or pods needs to end until the 20. You're right. I mean, we all kind of saw this. Remember, Joe K, to your point. Remember SEC championship or SEC media day week. We were all talking like, man, there could legitimately be tiebreakers. All the top teams not really playing each other. Like Ole Miss didn't play Tennessee, A&M, Texas. Tennessee didn't play Ole Miss, LSU, Texas A&M. A lot of these top contenders didn't really play each other in the regular season. So inevitably, we were expecting tiebreakers. And I'm with you. I think we missed divisions a little bit. I'd agree with you on that, Joe. Quickly, net rankings came out today in college basketball. Real quickly, getting back to college basketball. Tennessee comes out at number 1, Auburn 2, Florida 6, Kentucky 8, Alabama 13. Who else rolling through the SEC? Georgia 27th, Mississippi State 28th, Texas A&M 43rd, Missouri 46th, LSU 50th, Arkansas 51st. Ole Miss lower than you thought, 55th. Texas right behind them, 56th. Vandy 62nd. That's really it. And anybody that's in the meaningful kind of range. I did see a stat today. Right now, and this will inevitably change because people got to lose. Any loss in an SEC road game right now in basketball would be a quad 1 loss. That's how loaded the SEC is this year. And when they go 12-4, I mean, right now, in games played so far in this very short basketball season that most teams have played about 8 games in, the SEC's 10-1 against the ACC. The SEC is 10-1 against the ACC. And they're dominating the Big 12 as well. It's the best basketball conference in college basketball, folks. And I don't even think it's that close. I mean, the best Big 12 team, or the second best Big 12 team probably in Houston, is 0-2 against the SEC right now. Houston's not great. They're good. Kelvin Sampson's even stated that. They don't really have that score like they had in the past with Jamel Sheed. But still, net rankings out. A lot of big teams. I mean, again, the net rankings loves Florida just like I do. They got them at 6. Tennessee at 1, Auburn 2. SEC's loaded, folks. SEC is loaded, and we start off tomorrow night with the ACC-SEC Challenge. See if the SEC can go get it. Real quickly before we get you out of here, some things to monitor in the SEC championship game heading into it. Some things to quickly monitor, about 4 or 5 things you need to keep your eye on for Saturday. But kick you off in this one. Number 7, Georgia comes in at number 3, Texas, 4 p.m. Eastern on ABC. Texas currently favored by 2.5, over under 49.5. You folks know that where this game played, Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. We got the rematch. What could be different? What's some things to monitor? The start of the game. It couldn't have been a worse start for Texas. I mean, they gave Georgia the ball inside their 23 times start of the game. Texas can't start off any worse. But how does Texas come out? Remember that in the back of your head. The Kelvin Banks injury at left tackle. Georgia had 7 sacks in that October 19th matchup in Austin. Kelvin Banks, one of the better offensive linemen in the league. Tape hadn't shown it this year, but he does have good tape to put out there, all the physical attributes you could want. But how healthy is he in this one? Got hurt against A&M. Texas is in the playoffs. They don't have to win this game. Do they kind of take him out or kind of hold him out a little bit? If it's like, hey, he can't go. Let's save him for the playoffs. It's something to monitor as well because Georgia had a big day against him even when he played and he was healthy. 7 sacks. That'd be a big impact loss there. Another one, how often does Texas use Arch Manning in the red zone? Again, I think he has a phenomenal feel in the red zone across the board. Texas is not great in the red zone, folks. Just 88th in red zone offense, converting on scores 82% of the time, only scoring 17 rushing touchdowns. And what was I going to say? Just total touchdown 46 in total. I mean, I think you got to start using Arch Manning in this red zone offense. I think you see that at the very least it gives something Georgia another quarterback to prepare for. I think you could see that being a key X factor that you didn't see in the first game. Again, we saw Arch because they pulled Quinn Ewers in the first game, but we didn't see this Arch where you're being in the zone read. And you're pulling. It's a feel. Like I said, Jalen Milroe doesn't have a feel for the zone read game. It's why you rarely see them use it. At times they don't like to use it. Arch Manning has a feel. We saw it with Haynes King this past week, who Steve Sarkisian and them are going to go back and watch big. I think we may be able to take advantage of this and help us out in the red zone. That's something else to watch. Can Texas run the football? They've done a phenomenal job the last 2 weeks against Kentucky and against Texas A&M. When they committed to it with Trey Wisner and Jaden Blue, they've ran the football. They just haven't committed to it until the last 2 weeks. Does that continue? And we've seen what people have been able to do the last 2 years. Good running offenses against Georgia's interior now. Was it because they lost Jalen Carter in them? I don't know. But the last 2 years, when they played legit teams, you've been able to run against Georgia in the middle. Most times, about 90% of the time. It just is what it is right now. And then finally, can Georgia get Quinn Ewers once again in third and long situations? Georgia usually thrives against true pocket passers. Again, you don't really see that nobody really just goes and lights them up except Bryce Young in the 2021 SEC championship game. They usually struggle with runners. That's why you see them. They're 0-2 against Jalen Milroe. And Quinn's not an athlete. He can make plays when you have to, but when you just sit him back there and don't move his landmarks and he's a statue in the backfield, Georgia can bring a lot of their simulated pressures, and you saw that in the first game. Georgia's got to win on first and second down. So those are some keys to the game. Before we give you my specific prediction on Thursday, if you really want to go get a sneak preview, just go ahead and look at our preview that we posted today. Myself, Chris Phillips, Cole Thompson, we previewed the matchup, a good 30, 35-minute preview. Last one of the year. Wild to think about. We're already here, guys. But just wanted to talk about some quick things to monitor as we head into SEC championship game week. Texas, Georgia in a rematch. A lot of us had that one. But, guys, I appreciate you joining me on this episode. We talked about a lot. We talked about, are you a flag planner? Are you 4 teams planning a flag in the opposing team's midfield? And the only thing I'm against is stop trying to plant a flag in the middle of an artificial turf. I really don't care. I think it's an emotional rivalry week. I love the hatred. I love it being back. Again, I'm a lover, not a fighter. But I think we all talked about, man, do these guys even care about winning as much anymore? Is there even rivalries anymore? We saw this past week, Florida State, Michigan, Ohio State, Bama, Auburn kind of got into it a little bit. There's some still juice around there. Again, if you don't want people planting the flag in the middle of the field, beat them. We recapped all the rivalry week games across the board. We talked about who should get into the college football playoff out of the 3 SEC bubble teams: Alabama, Ole Miss, South Carolina. I think it's pretty easy to decide. I think it should be in this order: Bama, Ole Miss, South Carolina. I encourage you to go back and watch that segment. We talked college basketball, winners and losers of Feast Week. Auburn, best team in college basketball. Florida, top 10 right behind them. Thought Oklahoma surprising people, winning the battle for Atlantis. Losers, Cal, the boys got to get going. They got to start figuring that out. They got a big one tomorrow night in Miami. And then just some things to keep an eye on. Just, hey, Kelvin Banks injury in the SEC championship game. How is that going to be? Arch Manning, how do they utilize him in the red zone now? They're kind of playing a 2-quarterback system. Can Texas get Quinn Ewers in third and long again? And then Texas has been running the football well the last 2 weeks, and they've committed to it like they have against Kentucky and Texas A&M. I think they take that same approach because I'm going to say the quiet thing out loud, folks. You can run on Georgia on the interior, and that's only going to set up a lot of good play action, deep crossers that we all know Sark salivates to call. But, guys, for Dave Shoemate, your host here at Dave Talks Ball, go like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. No one brings you the best SEC content in football, basketball, and baseball like we do here at the SEC Unfiltered channel. This episode of Dave, before we get you out of here, guys, of Dave Talks Ball is brought to you by our buddies over at RHOBACK. Go use code SECU for 20% off your first purchase of all the fantastic things RHOBACK has, guys. But for Dave Shoemate, I'll see you guys on Thursday. You have a great remainder of your week.